Tonight's meeting to order of November 16th. Tom Chapa.
Here.
Heather Del Conte.
Here.
Pamela Dowd.
Here.
Lisa Glidden.
Here.
James McKenzie.
Here.
Sean Onmek. Here. Linda Sereno.
Here.
Zachary DeMott.
Here.
If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There is no one signed up for floor to the public tonight, so we will move to the superintendent's report with Dr. Calvin.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Great to see everybody back this evening. We have a couple of different things we'd like to share with you tonight. And as we get started, I think I'd like to just start with our students. We had a great presentation that occurred last Friday and Saturday on the weekend. Our drama club did a great presentation called Check Please. The presentation was well attended. Also, it was really great. It was a socially distanced play that they chose this year, which was awesome. And the kids just really did a great job. We just wanted to recognize them and tell them job well done. And I want to thank our staff, everybody who was a part of that. And they did a great job with keeping everybody nice and safe, but yet doing a great presentation. So really great job. So I wanted to recognize that tonight. Tonight, we had some pieces of information we wanted to share with you with respect to our budget development. As you know, last week we shared some pieces of information, and in doing so, a couple of things that we did point out to the board that in terms of goals that we wanted to try to make sure was there was, first of all, that whatever budget we created, that it would be fiscally sound, not excessive to our taxpayers, flexible, having flexibility within budget codes, that it would be foolproof, meaning that it would provide for emergencies should they occur, and flowing, having enough cash flow available in case state aid is withheld, and also that it would be aligned, that our budget would be aligned to the district strategic plan. And I think you mentioned last week that we also wanted to make sure that it considers long-term perspective as well. So we just wanted to make sure that those goals, that we're all still good with that. Everybody okay? All good with those goals? Okay, all right. In terms of budget development, just a couple of things we wanted to share with you. We are now scheduling meetings with all of our principals and department heads to begin to plan for next year. I know some people would say it's kind of early, but our goal is to start out early as we can because the next year will be with us sooner than we think, right? We're also sending out our standard template and Wishlist Survey to try to understand, are there any wish list items? And so once we get that information back, we'll bring it and share it transparently with the board. Okay. We are also transitioning salaries from our new contracts, it should say actually, into the new budget modules and reviewing positions. We will again come back also and share that information with the board as well in the near future. And we are also just wanting to make sure that we get information out to the board. There were some questions around the account codes. And so we just wanted to make sure that we share with you the chart of accounts strings, as it's called. Nancy, if you want to just kind of go over that with us for just a moment.
So our chart of accounts is put together using a fund, a function, an account, and a location. And our funds that we use are the general fund, and they all have letter codes that are associated with them. What the board votes on each year is the general fund, which is the A fund. But we also have a special aid fund, which is an F fund for federal and local grants. We have the fund that we use for the capital projects, that is an H fund. Our food service fund is a C fund. Our debt service is a V fund. And we have a special revenue fund that holds our scholarships, donations, and that is our CM fund. So an example of the functions are the Board of Ed function is 1010, and these are just examples. District clerk is 1040, and each of these functions are set up by the state comptroller's office. So they're also split up into function categories. So we have, and this is because when we report to the state on an annual basis with our ST3, it is categorized by general support, which is every function from 1,000 to 1999. Instruction is 2,000 to $29.99. Transportation is in the 5,000 function codes. Employee benefits are in the 9,000 to 9,099 budget codes. Debt service is 9,600 to 9,799, and interfund transfers are 9,900 to 9,999 function code. So objects is the next piece that you'll see in our chart string. So anytime you see an account that starts with a 1, that's for salaries. Anytime you see an account that starts with the number 2, that's always equipment. 4 is contractual, 5 is supplies, debt service principal starts with a 6, debt service interest starts with a 7, employee benefits start with an 8, and an interfund transfer starts with a 9. And this is going to make more sense as we go into the next slides. So our locations, and these are just examples, each of our schools has a 3-character designation. Riley is CER, Fitzhugh is FPS. We have DST, which is district-wide. That is not associated to any one location, but it could be that those services are shared district-wide. We have that code. Building and grounds is B&G. Our education center is EDC. Athletics is ATH. So that's where we're charging off those locations. Then if you look down below, so our full chart string would be A, 1010, 400 EDC. That's the general fund for the Board of Education, their contractual account, and we just have the Board of Education under the Ed Center. So that's why the location is there. So all of this is in your budget book that you get every year. And this is actually the first page of the budget book that you see. Now, it's a little counterintuitive because you would think that the Board of Education title would be above the account codes, but it's actually below. So whenever you look at the budget book, A1010-400 is the board contractual, A1010-475 is their conference travel line, and then underneath that, where you see the asterisk, that's the summary of the total of all of the board expenses. And it shows you the proposed budget, the prior year budget, and then any dollar and percent change in there. So our chart of accounts is very purposeful, and most of it is from the State Comptroller's Office. We do have some leeway and some flexibility in numbering the accounts, and if we want to add a little more specificity, but that's it in a nutshell. Are there any questions?
It's pretty straightforward, but if it's like 475, it's still a contractual expense, you're itemizing it.
Correct. So you could have a lot of 400s. You could have a 400, which is just contracts. 475 is travel. A 490 code is BOCES.
Now, is that something we have discretion over, or is that standard?
That's standard.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
just, yeah, on the budget, there's a couple things I've been thinking about. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I watched the video. When looking at the budget, we've been increasing our budget for quite a while. And I think everybody, well, I won't say that. I think that we have a large budget for the number of students we have. I think it is somewhat justified in the needs that we have as a community. But I do think we've been, over the years, kind of adding and adding, usually in the range of 2-3% a year. And so I'm thinking about this year coming up, and Dr. Calvin, you described that we're going to have the capital fund coming up, right? So we're going to have to add to the budget and explain to everybody, as you did last week, and we'll, I'm sure, have to say again and again, why we're doing that, and that this is not a long-term budget change, but this is something that we're going to have to add on. But as part of that, what I want us to at least pay attention to as a group is how much we're increasing the budget again this year. You know, the original proposal last year, I don't know the exact number, but it would have probably come in at around about 3.8% increase. It ended up about a 3% increase. And I personally think that we should try to tap the brakes, as has been said before. So especially in this upcoming year, because we have this added soil remediation aspect to it, that we shouldn't be losing the knowledge of really the baseline of what we're talking about. And maybe as a board talking about what we're comfortable with, what is actually tapping the brakes, and what does that mean? And how do we do that in an appropriate way given everything that we need to serve? So I just wanted to throw that out there because I wasn't part of the last conversation, and I have been thinking about it. And the second thing thinking about is when we get to start crafting our budget, when we're getting into the spring months and it's really time to start looking at this, we are starting to get some of our projected surpluses. And I've kind of paid attention to this over the years, just thinking about numbers as my brain tends to. I don't know exactly, because I don't have the numbers to show of what was left over each year, but we tend to underestimate a little bit. So if you look at our May or June numbers of what we thought our projected unallocated fund balance would be, it was a whole lot higher when it came to the end audit. And so I wonder, you know, how are these numbers derived? I'm not asking for now, of course. But, you know, I'm wondering how these end numbers are derived and how we can look at them when we're actually doing the budget and we're thinking about how much unallocated funds may we have at the end of the year. And we're asked to decide about a budget for the upcoming year. It's good to understand that those numbers are within a ballpark. And the 7.4 million that we ended up with extra is understandable given all of the dynamics of that current year, but it wasn't close to what was being projected. And so I just would ask that we can maybe talk about and think about that as part of this process as well. So those are the two things. Thank you.
Okay. Point well taken. Okay, yes, I would agree. I'd be open for those conversations. Any other questions or feedback from the board at all?
I just have a quick response in that I think we have to be thoughtful, though, also about the difference between the budget and the tax rate. And I think you're probably not conflating those things, but if we just, you know, signed a bunch of contracts that have a 2 to 3% salary increase, the budget's going to go up by 2 to 3%. And so my concern is when I hear then tapping the brakes would be, well, we can't tap it on personnel expenses. I don't want to tap it on the rest of our programming, right? So that's the, but I mean, yeah, these are, at some point, I guess we'll have these conversations more in depth, but, and I think when we do the budget percent increase for next year, we should have the caveat of that, like, however much it ends up being for the soil remediation, like, not include that, because it's just an in and out for accounting purposes only, because it wouldn't be transparent to count that as a budget increase, I think.
Understand. Okay. Tom?
Yeah, and I just said, wanted to say, I think if we look at this comprehensively, and when we get with Rick Timms, and look at that long-range plan, we've also got to take all these elements and put them in, and also mindful of 9 Mile in the long term. And so where our arc is going to be, what's sustainable in the long term, in the short term and the long term. But this year, you're right, Jim, was an aberration and that kind of money. But you can look at the historic data prior to that, and we can say, okay, we know where our arc is. And when we tap the brakes, I agree with you, Lisa, that we don't want to do it. We're programming, but I think we can be a little bit more attentive to different areas and make it fit still with the long-term plan.
Right. And I'll back up. I completely understand what you're saying and completely agree with you, Lisa. Just these new budget will not be so impacted by the salaries. Although we did negotiate new contracts, we actually had similar, if not the same raises this current year. So while we were not under contract, we did vote to give raises to those. So it's not like it was no raise before and now we're adding a raise. Those things were the same. And yes, while, you know, our staffing accounts for more than 50% of our budget, it's not 100%. And again, I don't know where the exact numbers lie out, but I do go back to think about trying to manage a system that has been increasing a lot over the years, and trying to make sure that, again, not about the tax levy does matter, but we've had so much new state funding come in as well. That's why all of these numbers seem, oh, but the tax levy's down, or the rate's down, the state aid's up, and there's pilots. There's so many moving pieces that I don't want to lose this aspect as part of the conversation. And that's why I'm glad you said the same thing, Tom, of, you know, making sure that when we look at, I think actually Lisa, you said it, was when we're talking about these numbers, don't kind of, you know, put them together. Separate them out. What is our actual budget for this year? And then what is the budget for this year because of the soil? And instead of presenting something as a whole, which I know we have to have a bottom dollar number. In that budget book, there has to be a bottom dollar number. But as we go through our process, making sure that we're differentiating those two every time we talk about it. Because it's different. Thank you.
Yeah, I also think something that has been advocated for years is to also, so if we look at our budget relative to other districts, and I know it isn't always apples to apples, every district has their own uniqueness, but our budget seems to be much greater than even like-sized districts. So kind of fleshing out why that is, because that has been the case for many, many years. And, you know, if it really is, you know, salaries, or it really is, you know, that we spend more on, you know, X, Y, and Z, who knows? But I don't know that we've ever really identified what that piece is that makes our budget much higher than like-sized districts.
Yes, I would say the studies that we are now engaged in will help us to answer those questions. In fact, I was just yesterday with Alan and Debbie from the group that's coming to do a number of pieces around our program. And they'll be looking at that. Rick Timms is going to spend a lot of times on what's the difference? Why is it that a district of our size has a higher budget than another district of our size? And they're going to actually compare us to similar districts around us in the area, some that are not around us, just to kind of look at some of those differences. So I think a lot of those questions, we'll be able to finally put some answers to them to try to understand what it is, and then kind of go from there, basically. So all this information, great information, and we will certainly make sure, once this meeting's over, we'll watch the video a couple more times and make sure we get it all down so that we can include it in the process for sure. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts from anybody? Okay, all right. So one of the things we want to say is if there are additional budget topics or questions that you'd like or information that you want from us, if you just share that with us, we will make sure that we get that for you as we kind of come back in additional budget workshops. Okay. All right, we want to shift gears now. We had a request to kind of talk a little bit about conflict in our schools. So our district, like many others across the U.S., has been working through conflicts that have and or may occur in schools. So this includes, but it is not limited to physical or verbal altercations. So coming back this year, I think a number of superintendents have kind of said, hey, what's going on here? We've seen some physical and or verbal altercations in schools. Some of these things started before the school year even began and just kind of made their way into the school year, or into the schools rather. However they got here, they've been here. So we had a very busy, I would say, couple of weeks when we got started. But I'm happy to say, I was talking with Ryan today, a number of the issues that we were dealing with at the beginning of the year have seemed to kind of settle down. I think the last altercation, if I remember correctly, that Ryan shared with me was late October. It's been a couple of weeks where things have not been as busy as they started out with. So our data, it shares that basically when we look at our data, just to be transparent and upfront, we've had some physical altercations. Most of those have occurred here at the high school. So we've had about 13 of those during the beginning of the year. And we know that many of those things were happening basically around transitioning times. Kids are going from one class to another classroom. Two of them were at the end of the day outside, going to the bus or walking outside. One was during a lunch period. The other one was after school, after hours actually, when kiddos were not here. Very few physical altercations we are seeing at our elementary schools. We had 3 total, again, transition time, going from one class to another classroom. And then we had 3 at the middle school. So, we are continuing to, by the way, aggregate and analyze the school's data, district data, to understand when, where, the time, reasons as to why, what are some of those root causes. In fact, our district administrative team has been meeting probably for the last, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks about this. We brought in all of our principals to sit down and just talk about what's happening in our schools, how can we resolve, and make things better for all kids. Now, in those conversations and in those meetings, as we were talking, we recognized that there were some root causes that were really kind of stimulating or causing some of these challenges. So we began to kind of talk through the root causes, and you'll hear me talk a little bit about that, and also some action plans that we put together. So it's not just kids are just fighting because they want to fight, right? There are some real things going on that we recognize that were at the root of some of those issues. So I apologize about the smallness on the print up there, but you do have a presentation in front of you there. So one of the root causes that we started to see as to what was happening was that there has been, over the last 18 months or so, isolation. Some of our families have actually gone through real trauma. And, there's been some also developmental kind of delay, right, with some of our students. So they've been out of the routine, out of the day-to-day, rituals, routines. And some of the learning, there's some gaps, and we know that we have to fill in some of those gaps. But some of our students have actually been very isolated. Some of them have actually gone through trauma. Just for example, we have a series of kiddos who, have families have been in kind of like crisis through COVID-19. Mom or dad have lost employment. Some of our children have had family members who passed away from COVID-19. Families have been isolated or quarantined because of COVID-19. So there's been some real challenges there. And so in understanding that, we know that we need to provide professional development for our staff, and we've been working with staff around differentiation and meeting the needs of all of our kids. We know that we need to provide workshops and opportunities also for our parents. So we've been planning for these things, planning for workshops for parents. We actually have some things already that have started. Layton is one of the schools that I can give an example at. We have social and emotional time, parent workshop time. And what we're planning to do is take those and live stream those across the district and have additional opportunities around the district to help some of our parents as well. We've been providing social and emotional supports. We've deployed our social workers, counselors, mental health counselors for our students and also our families. And I want to stress the family piece, right? Because what we're seeing is that it's not the child that needs some support. Oftentimes, the whole family needs that wraparound kinds of support. So we have a number of people working with wraparound services across the district. We've been providing academic intervention supports and services, and also supports for our special ed students, our students who are English language learners where needed. And we found that, our kids, there's a lot of intervention. So when children are having a difficult time with reading and writing and math, we have some children who had a hard time just coming back learning how to write with the pen or the pencil. So they left here in kindergarten, and now they're in first, second grade, and just putting the pencil to the paper is frustrating. It's causing some of the kids to get a little bit upset. And so we've had to really kind of just stop for a moment, understand and see what's going on, and provide as much academic intervention as we could. And what we've also understood is that, for some of, everybody's busy and there's a lot going on. But from time to time, what we're doing is what we call pause and reteach. Because kids haven't been in those rituals and routines, we've had to just stop for a moment and just go back over kind of some of the basics. How do we walk in the hallways? How do we resolve conflicts that we're going through? It's those conflict resolution skills that across the entire system that we've had to kind of really go back and do some reteaching. I know that we have Regents exams that are coming. I know that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, but we are clear that there are times we just got to take a pause, and we've had to, as an administrative team, some of our staff, I think, are a little bit sometimes concerned about taking the pause. And so we've had to say, okay, let's give them permission when they need to take a pause and time out for a moment and reteach some of these social skills to feel comfortable and okay at doing that, okay? There's some fear of COVID-19 that's causing some concerns. There are people who, I don't want you this close to me, I want you to separate which we get, because people don't want to catch COVID-19. So in response to that, we have been providing educational programs, and we'll continue to do that around COVID-19, implementing with integrity our protocols, so that, people are being careful. We want people to be proactive, not reactive. So we have a number of protocols across the district that we're saying, hey, you got to wear your mask. You need to be socially distanced. You shouldn't be hugging in the hallway. You got to be separate when you're, here or there, right? We have, as you know, testing programs that are moving forward. Our screening testing program is coming very soon. Our diagnostic program is already up and going. And we have vaccination clinics to help people, and hopefully that will help with some of those fears. Cultural shift is one of the root causes. Things have changed. So I think a lot of people came back with the mindset of, we're going to go back to the way it was before. And here's the reality. We probably will never go back to the way it was before. Things are different, and they will probably be different moving forward. So it's creating that new norm. One of the things that we've seen with culture that's been a real concern is negative information being posted through social media, kids finding ways to post things about themselves and put it out there. And a lot of this started over when they were not here in person. People were doing things on social media. And so now I'm back in person. I got to kind of show you that what I posted, I'm tough about it, right? And that's, caused some challenges. So to counteract some of the negative things that we're seeing on social media, we're going to be putting forth a very positive campaign about the district. If you kind of go to our Facebook page, you'll see a lot of the positive things that are going on, but our goal is to kind of get more of that information out to counteract some of the negative. We're providing programming, and we will continue to provide more programming on social media for learning. We were talking today in our cabinet meeting about some of the resources in the community, whether through local police or state agencies that can help us to come in and teach the kids about the concerns around social media, but not just our kids, but we want to also offer it for parents too, because we want them to be a part of that whole process, because some of the concerns we're having involve some of our parents, not all, but some of our parents too. PBIS, so that is really, yes, our goal is to make sure we go all out around PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports. So, it's easy to recognize when someone's not doing what they're supposed to, but it's really important that we spend more time focusing on the positive things that are happening, that it might encourage those who may be thinking about doing something negative to go and do something more positive in a sense. So PBIS is certainly something that throughout our schools across the district you will hear more about as we move forward. Our principals, again, have already been talking about this. Many are already putting in place PBIS pieces, whether it's a awards night or a certificate or a call home or something. Our goal is to make sure, whatever it is, that we encourage positive behaviors. Restorative practices in all schools. We know that we need some additional training around this, so we are right now researching and looking for additional people to come in and to actually do the training around restorative practice. The goal with the restorative practices is to help children understand how their behavior, how it affects others, right? And to build relationships and to kind of restore them in a sense, so that yes, you had a trouble, yes, you had a problem, but we don't want it to go on for the whole year. We want to correct it. We want you to understand it. We all understand what's going on and move us in a positive direction forward, basically. Okay. Stamina is a real root cause issue for some of our fights that we're seeing. We have some children. A lot of children in our system who are they're stressed. I'm going to just say it like that. And not just our students, some of our staff are too. And things are a little different. So, you know, we weren't here as long last year. Wednesdays, we were doing remote days, right? And some of the assignments may not have been as long. I could only tell the story of a young man, I've shared it with our administrators, who is in the high school. I see him often in the hallways, and he compliments me on my tie or something like that, and we talk a little bit. And I asked him, how's it going? How's things going? And he shared with me quite honestly that things are good, but he's challenged. What's the challenge? What's going on? I got a lot of homework. It's a lot. And it's 6 or 7, 6 different subjects, and I'm trying to keep up. And the child means no harm. But when you kind of look at what's happening, it's just transitioning back. It's just very difficult. So we're talking now about, with homework, can we do a math night, an English night, a reading night across the district, rather than trying to do them all on the same night, until we can build our children back, to get them back to where they were before, because some of them are just having a hard time with it. We are offering supports, wellness supports for students, families, and staff, EAP supports for our staff. You heard the term toxic positivity. Our goal is to be as positive as we can. We're deploying, again, mental health and behavioral health supports. We have some agencies that we're working with, Oswego Behavioral Health, Farnham, and we have behavioral clinics in a number of our schools already across the district that we're utilizing. And then also, we are evaluating and altering practices where needed. I know that in high school, Ryan just had a discussion with the high school staff around assignments, around homework, just so that we can think that through a little bit. So stamina, very important. Family and student stressors. Again, I want to go back to that whole part about crisis. COVID-19 has caused some crisis for families. And so one of the things that we're really working hard on, with the families and our students, big part, relationships. So, I've shared with our leaders, and we've talked a lot about how relationships really matter. Sometimes when schools are having challenges like the one we started out with at the beginning of the year, I don't think the answer is bringing in more SROs or a ton of more security. I think sometimes we have to take a step back and think about the relationships that we have with the families and with the children, right? So one of the things we're working on is continuing to build relationships with students and families, and we have a number of staff who are doing a great job with this. And again, we're deploying all of our mental health supports, all of our behavioral supports, our social work supports, providing instructional programming that supports the social and emotional needs of our kids. We have a number of programs going on in the district. At the middle school, there's a 15-minute check-in and lunch group program. The kids are meeting with a particular person 3 times a day, in the morning, at the lunchtime, and some other time during the day, they're checking in with the same adult. And that's been helping quite a bit at the middle school. At the high school, we have Rachel's Challenge, which is up now, and they're actually starting a Rachel's Club, if I remember correctly. Heidi, tell me if I'm wrong. And that goal is to try to help culturally across the district, dealing with bullying, dealing with issues, challenges. How do we get help and support? At the elementary schools, we have the Second Step program that teaches those social skills to all of our elementary students and helps to address any mental health kind of support or needs that are out there. And then also at OHS, we have student success planning, where they have a group of people who come together as a team to help plan for kids who are struggling. We've identified a number of those students, and our goal is to work with them. And so that team wraps around those children. We have small counseling groups, one-to-one counseling groups. Minetto has a counseling club as well. And we've done a lot of triage and also wraparound long-term supports. And also one of the things that we're now working on is training and deploying peer leaders, particularly at the high school. We think that by working with some of their peers, our students will actually be encouraged to continue to stay on the right path. Yes, go ahead.
How do kids volunteer to be a part of that?
They would just see the principal or the administrative team as those announcements go out, and they can certainly be a part of that. And they'll get training and support and all of those pieces there. The last 3 things I want to just share is that there's some additional things that we are working on with respect to the student code of conduct. So we are, holding students responsible for their behavior, by the way. We don't want people to think because we're talking about all these things, we're not. We are. We are using the district code of conduct with fidelity, and integrity. We are increasing our partnership efforts with families, with our community, to help our kids around with respect to their conduct and identifying and adjusting strategies for increased supervision with buildings. Wherever we find that we have some challenges around supervision, we're deploying staff to those areas to make sure everybody is safe. Here in the high school, recently we talked about putting in some additional monitors. We know that there was an issue around transition, right? And the goal is to put those people in those areas to help kids with transitioning and to reduce some of those issues. With social and emotional and mental health supports, again, we've been aligning our resources to provide targeted supports. And just so folks know, we also have 2 documents that we're working on. We wanted to catalog what we're providing. So we are now in the process of creating a student support service resource guide for all of our leadership teams so that they all are clear on what's happening, how you access supports in your schools, and also a comprehensive social and emotional guide for parents so that they know this is the plethora of services that we have. I'm finding as we talk with parents, they may not know that we have, hey, there's a behavioral health clinic right here in our schools. All you have to do is come, right? You know, there's a partnership, and some of the parents don't know that, so we want to help them to understand what's available too. And we are providing our employees with access to wellness supports as well. So we have employee assistance programs, EAP program, and the telehealth service through the Krause Hospital, if I remember correctly, that staff, if they need some help, we want to support them as well. And then lastly, we have some preventative efforts to decrease violence. We are assessing and revising individual security plans in our schools, especially for arrival and dismissal. When we need to change things around, we're doing that as needed. We're reviewing the district's safety equipment as well. We found that that's been helping also, so we can see some things that maybe we didn't know what was going on, but the cameras have been helpful. We have several cameras, by the way, that they're outdated, need updating. There's about 10 of them across the district. We now know where they're at, and we are updating some of those too, just to continue to have that monitoring. And we're coordinating with the Oswego County Sheriff's Office and the Police Department to support us as well with arrival, dismissal, whatever we need help with. They've been great, by the way. We've had some incidents that they've been showing up at any time to help and support. But also, the partnership is critical because a lot of times they know stuff that's going on in the community, and we don't know it. And so we've been opening up those communication valves or discussion links and saying, hey, listen, if you hear about something, can you let us know? Because it comes often into school, and they've been willing to help and support and partner with us in those ways. The last thing is one of the things that we have noticed is that, like most districts, there are some staffing shortages from time to time. Substitutes is a good example. It's hard to find substitutes nowadays. Bus drivers, teachers, people in the cafeteria, it's just hard to find them. So when you can't find enough people, sometimes it opens up the door to challenges because there's not a lot of oversight. Not enough, I should say, oversight. So we are doing everything we can to recruit people. I know that Heidi's already done a recruitment fair out in the public. She's been to the college as of recent to do, trying to get student teachers to come in who may want to do student teaching or whatever, or substitute teaching, or they are available for jobs. So we're working on staffing, and as we hear that a school needs some additional supports, we're deploying supports as soon as we possibly can, okay? So I hope I helped to explain what we're doing. A lot happening, comprehensive issue. We're digging deep as opposed to surface, and our goal is to try to continue to work on reducing and meeting the needs of our kids and helping to reduce these physical or verbal altercations in schools. Questions or comments or thoughts? Yes.
So I just wanted to say, one of the things that at least I've noticed in my position on campus is that students who are in crisis are coming to faculty, to other staff who are not necessarily prepared to deal with that. And I know you've got guidance counselors and, we have a counseling staff, but so maybe just as a thought for the future, some professional development. So instead of, the EAP program is fantastic, but maybe even some professional development of for everybody about wellness, because that could be also some of the stress that the staff are feeling.
Yes, great point. We are working on that. I don't know the lady's name. Leanne, I think is her name? Leanne Benedict is one of the persons that we are now planning for to come in to support us around that, what you just shared. So yes, we agree with you. Totally agree. Thank you. It's all good. More the merrier, right? I'll be there right on the front row too. So, all good. The question, Tom?
Yeah, I just want to know, are we considering the use of cell phones and social media in that whole process in terms of dealing with them? You know, at what point are they integrated when kids start bringing them into school, in the middle school, I'm assuming, or when they have them, and when they become problematic? And are we looking at that as a source, also just an element to look at relative to the social aspect of it?
Yes, we are looking at that. And I would say we're definitely looking at it. We, as I shared, there's some professional development that we're doing around that we're going to be doing with parents, students, staff. You know, there are some good aspects with social media if you use it the right way, and with technology. There's a lot of great things that kids can do using cell phones in school. However, we have some who are using it in the wrong ways. So yes, we are considering those things, and what's the appropriate ways to use it, what are the inappropriate ways, the impact that it has, and also what are the supports so that kids, again, we're reteaching behavior. What do they need so that they get it, that, you know, the things you do on social media, it has an impact on someone else, especially when you're writing something that's inappropriate. So yes, we are considering those. I hope I answered your question. Other questions?
I just wanted to make a couple of points. First of all, just to clarify too, this is going to include the coaches as well in the training,
Whole
correct?
system. Yes, ma'am. Whole
I
system.
think to Lisa's point, there are a lot of times in a position to receive that crisis information, you know what I mean, and may or may not know how to handle it.
Yes.
So I think that's fantastic. I really appreciate the deep dive, and my next suggestion is not in any way meaning to make that superficial, but I had spent the last 2 Mondays here at the school with a sheep, which is hilarious, but it was here to represent the Ag Club. But the powerful part about it was kids came up, handled the sheep, and left with commenting things like, you know, this changed my whole day. Like, I had a horrible day, but now it's all great. I can't wait to tell my mom. You know, those kind of things. Just the power of pet therapy. It really has, you know, there's a lot of research behind it, and it's something small that can be done on a regular basis, just having the presence of pets or animals in the school that can really make a significant impact on the mental well-being of students. So just a thought.
Actually, to that note, pre-pandemic was Gretchen Frank. I think spearheaded it, but yeah, we had dogs in the schools. They're fabulous. And the change over students, like Heather said, oh, this made my day. Yeah, a pet from a dog, just petting a dog and getting calm from it, or it doesn't matter. It works. So it would be fabulous to bring that back. I witnessed it firsthand multiple times. It's a great program. So it would be wonderful if we can get to a point to bring that back. Again, I appreciate the deep dive. I definitely appreciate the look at perhaps bringing in more hall monitors. Hall monitors establish great relationships with students. Sometimes they're the ones, that they confide in, or may say, hey, I heard about this, and there's your tips, those relationships, not just with hall monitors, with a teacher, with a cafeteria worker, with anybody that works in our district. You don't know who a kid might grab onto and feel safe with. It's key. The relationships are key. So thank you for digging deep and finding support for the staff and faculty to be able to help our students and our parents, our families, adjust to the new normal. Thank you.
Okay, everybody good? Okay, all right, okay. Let's shift topics down, just talk really a little bit here about winter sports. We are now moving into the winter sports period. November to February is that cycle of sports. The season includes a number of different activities going on, everything from basketball to cheerleading, bowling, hockey, swimming and diving, wrestling, indoor track, basketball, cheerleading, And then there's some modified pieces there as well. So definitely a busy sports season that is upon us. So with all of those things, one of the things that comes is, well, a couple of things. Number 4, many of these are what we call high-risk sports. Unfortunately, they just are. And we're certainly tracking, watching infections related to sports. We're watching what's happening across the student body, and also just in the community in general to see how things are. So the question is, what do we do? Do we continue to move forward? How do we move forward? What are the thoughts? At this time, and I certainly am open to the feedback from the board. Are there risks? We know that there are. But at this time, what my thought is that I'm recommending that we continue to move forward with the sports seasons. However, a couple of things. First, we require masking from everybody, right? That we use those strategies that we've been using all along, sanitizing, washing hands wherever you possibly can, but masking is required. I think the second thing is that we encourage vaccination and or screening. So we did put out letters in the last group of seasons asking folks to consider that. We did have some who did get vaccinated. We did have some, who did want to do some screening on their own. We will have screening testing here in our schools. They'll be offered every day. So any child that wants to be a part of that process, we want to encourage them to take and utilize that. If there's an issue, then what we would say is that what we said to everybody is, you got a problem, if there's issues with any of the symptoms around COVID-19, that you not participate. If there is a problem with any of the sports, then we'll do as we've been doing all along, right? We'll stop them. We'll put pauses in or stop wherever we have to. I think that this recommendation is not just shooting from the gut. I would say that I've been watching what's happening across all of our teams. I think our coaches, our volunteer coaches, have been working really hard at this, trying to find a way to keep things rolling, but keep things safe. I know that some of them may be frustrated at times when we have to put a pause in, but it is what it is, right? We want to keep everybody safe. So with that said, those are my recommendations in terms of those, all of our sports. Watch very closely, and if there's a problem, I would have no problem with putting a pause in. Feedback from the board, is everybody, your thoughts?
Sounds good.
Everybody okay?
I had a question, not necessarily about this, but as I'm watching in the county, the numbers were kind of mirroring what happened last year at around this time from relative to numbers and Halloween. Not as serious as a spike, but it is. As we're about 2 weeks out following, and the numbers had gone up. Had we seen anything similarly in our numbers internally?
So in terms of Halloween that just passed, we were watching very, very closely to see what happened. And we did not have a lot of cases. I think the total number was like 14 over the last couple of weeks. So Monday when we came in, we had like 5 cases that happened over the weekend, and then we had 2 on Monday. But that was it out of 36, almost 3,600 kids. So last year Halloween, I mean, we had to close all of our buildings because it just started to get crazy Halloween, November, and Christmas, if you recall. So my thought is that I think some of our parents and students kind of really thought about what happened last year. And I think a lot of people were a little bit more careful, a little bit more concerned about what they did in terms of the Halloween time. We also have some kids who've been vaccinated. We did have a high school vaccination clinic, and some people got vaccinated in the public. And I think people were just a little more careful this year. Now, I don't know what will happen at Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we'll be watching closely to see. But the numbers were not, they just weren't higher this year. They just weren't for those. And, we were just kind of watching. We had staff waiting to contact trace, and we didn't see those numbers at all.
Yeah, that's great, because in the county, they did have that
county
rise. We were up to
yes.
11, I think, percent, 7-day
Yes.
average just the other day. It's down a little today, but.
11, I think it's.
Yeah,
12 or
11,
something.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's great, that internally, because that keeps everything moving forward. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, everybody all right? All right. We, just to let you know also though, one of the things I want to be clear about, if we start to see concerns, then I will certainly be in touch with the board, because we may have to limit size. Now, these are all indoor sports, and my concern is just having too large of crowds inside. So we may have to go to 2 to 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the most per participant. We will continue to, everybody's got a mask when they're indoors. And then we're going to, monitor each sport closely. Tournaments. So I have been asked, can we host tournaments, tournaments here. Yes, thank you. Right now, I'm going to recommend that we hold off on doing those. I'm concerned about having larger crowds. Especially again, we're indoors, we're not outside right now. So I'm going to recommend that we hold off on that at this point in time. But we'll be watching. So if you hear me come back about the crowd piece, it's just, I'm concerned about it being indoor and the spread and all those things. Okay, everybody okay?
Can I ask a question about the sports and how we're handling, because of COVID and having to use like gym spaces uniquely, have we had to also be thinking out of the box in terms of where we're holding and how we're holding practices? Because
Yes.
I have just gotten some word that there's some wonky things happening, so I'm just curious.
Yes, we've been very creative with the times and the schedules and putting this group here and this group there, because you can only have so many people in space. And yes, we have been. It's been a little bit different this year than probably what folks have been used to. But again, it's just trying to keep people safe. So yes, okay, all right, all right. We have one last piece. Tom, I'm going to ask you to come up and join us. Come on up. So Tom Buckle is here with us. You can come to the table if you want to, or you can stand and just pull that microphone over next to you. It's all there. So we just have a solar exemption piece that's come to our attention. We want to just share it with the board. Just in terms of background and history, we received a letter from the Green Street Power Partners regarding construction of a solar farm in the town of Scriba. The district has basically 60 days to respond in writing if we intend to require a pilot for the agreement. The law allows for a 15-year exemption from property taxes for renewable energy systems. And in order for the district to receive school taxes, then we must have a pilot agreement with them. So this does require the district to opt out of exemption, which would require board action. Our recommendation at this point in time is that we do have a pilot agreement. And I asked Tom if he would come in and just talk a little bit about this and give his thoughts and feedback to the board. Just pull that mic right close to you there.
Better?
I think it should be on.
Try it now.
Okay.
You can pull it out if you want to. There you go.
The state law that is in play is designed to encourage the development of alternative energy sources, primarily solar and wind. And it doesn't exempt the entire project from taxes. What it does is it says that the value added by the solar and wind component is exempt from taxes, real estate taxes. And it allows jurisdictions to, quote, opt out of that. Meaning, if you file the appropriate statements in this state, you got to file it in 2 places, the district or whatever jurisdiction's involved says, no, we don't want to give this benefit. We want to tax this property fully, regardless of the value that's added from solar, wind, or any good source. Several jurisdictions across the state have done that. Not a lot, but some have. Mostly municipalities, towns, and however, most have not. Now, what that means is that the taxing authorities are still not left without revenue if these projects develop. You have the opportunity to enter into a pilot agreement, a payment in lieu of taxes agreement. So that annual payment in lieu of taxes is probably something that's a little bit less than might have been paid at full value, but more than you would get based on existing use of whatever vacant parcels being developed. And you have, for whatever reason, the law says that if a developer is going to take advantage of this law, it has to give all the municipalities and districts, taxing districts, notice that it's going to take advantage of it and ask if the district wants to enter into a pilot. And you have 60 days to say yes or no. And the consequence of saying no is you may be left holding the bag with nothing, quite possibly. Or if you, quote, opted out, which you could do, that means you could tax the property fully, but the developer would probably say, no, I'm not going to do this project anymore. You know, that's why the law exists and it's why these projects are being done. So by giving notice that you're going to enter into a pilot, you would, as one of the many jurisdictions around here, receive an annual payment in lieu of taxes, something that, again, approximates what might have been paid, but perhaps a little less, but more than you'd get otherwise. Dr. Kelvin had a great point with me in our discussions back and forth. He said, you know, if the board, for whatever reason, said we want to opt out, would that apply to all taxpayers, including, let's say, the farm that put some solar panels on its property? And the answer is yes. It would apply to everybody. So if a household, a small business, a farm, developed some wind, had some windmills, and or had some solar panels, and was exempt from taxation, real estate taxes, on the added value, if you were to opt out, it would apply to everybody. Not a great situation. So from a public policy standpoint, the law is designed to encourage the development. That's a good thing. You're not going to be without payment if you say yes. If you did say we're going to opt out, the project would likely, they'd probably walk, saying we're not going to deal with, different taxes from different jurisdictions. We want a pilot. If you say we're going to enter into a pilot, as I understand the arrangement between the town, city, county, is the IDA will negotiate the amount of the annual payment in lieu of tax agreement for 15 years. That's it in a nutshell.
Questions from the board?
So what you're saying, based on what you said, you and Dr. Calvin were talking about, the law does not differentiate between commercial and private usage?
Not on its face. I'm not an expert on this tax structure, but I've read the law. It doesn't differentiate. It's broadly defined as development of solar and wind capacity. I think it's got limited use for a house.
I was going to say, could we enter a pilot with an individual who decides to upgrade their property to the extent that it would increase their assessment value that much? I mean, put in 50, 100 grand worth of wind power or solar power. Now we're going to treat that individual to a pilot?
No.
I didn't think so.
And it's a good question, and here's the scenario played out. And I'm not talking as an expert. I'm talking as somebody who's read the statute. First, that homeowner puts in 50 grand of solar panels, gets rid of the gas boiler, all right? If they desire to enter into a pilot for the added value, again, not the entire tax, only the added value, they have to give you notice. And I'm guessing no homeowner, no farm, no small business has done that. And you know something? To be practical too, you convert your house to solar. Get rid of your gas or electric heat. How's the assessor going to view that? How much, is it extra value, less value? I don't know. And I'm not sure the assessor probably knows either. But this is a big scale project, and that's what the law is really designed to encourage. And so it's a development, jobs, power, alternative sources, increasing hopefully the pool of power available in the community. So They're the ones that are going to send you notice saying, we're going to do this project and we intend to enter into a pilot unless you tell us you're not going to.
So there comes the second part of my question. So we're going from, a plot of land that has less worth to a plot of land that has much more worth. As part of this process, the way the law is set up, they give us this notice but have no commitment to actually do the job, as opposed to, we have this, we've done this, now we would like to negotiate with you. You see what I mean? Because it goes to the question of, as you implied, well, what if they just say no? What if they just decide not to do the project? And so
Okay.
I guess that's, my question's coming to where in this are we?
I don't know where this project is. I've been in touch with the attorney who sent that very, let's say, courteous letter to Dr. Calvin on the Bell situation. He represents some towns. I have spoken with him. And he says the project is going. It looks like it's got financial viability. The IDA is ready to negotiate the pilot. But I don't know if they have financing lined up, construction contracts. So you're right.
So the law is not necessarily set up saying that corporations can actually say ahead of time, hey, I'm thinking about this. How would you deal with this if we did it? As opposed to say, hey, I've got this land, I'm going to do it, or I've already done it. Because I'm thinking about our nuclear pilots, right? We know that is a set of property that's already worth a certain amount of money and do all that. It's easier to kind of negotiate that. But you do bring up a scenario where it's like, if you decide one way or another, the developer can say, oh, no, thank you. Right? So I guess that's kind of why.
We're no worse off.
No, we're no worse off except for the fact that as a district, and I'm speaking purely from my own sense here, of course, I would like to encourage as much renewable energy as possible. I would like to have more solar farms. I would like to have more wind farms. I would like to encourage our community to invest in clean energy. So I think, again, personally, I can't speak for the whole board, of course, I do think these kinds of things would be good to promote. But at the same time, you need to weigh the benefit and the cost to the district, right? And when doing that weighing, you have to know what the end game is. And if the end game's walk away, or the end game is what could you get in real property taxes, there's differences there.
Yeah, again, that's a policy decision. As far as the law is concerned, you ask, can they walk? What it says, if the owner develop of such a system, and again, there's got to be a system that complies with regulations issued under the law. Again, I don't know if a house would comply, but the regulations may or may not talk about big projects or little projects. So if the owner of a developer provides written notification, which it did, to the taxing jurisdiction, of, quote, its intent to construct such a system, its intent. So we have notice of the developer's intent to construct the system. We have an obligation to write back saying, okay, we're going to enter into the pilot, and in doing so, however the IDA negotiates it, on the surface, you're going to end up getting more in annual revenue than you would with the property as is.
Thank you.
Likely.
Yep, that answered my question.
Tom, I think you had a question?
Well, it was along the same lines as what was the current use of the property? And was it farmland or something where the
Yeah.
valuation was
I
such
don't
that
know, and I don't know if Nancy has looked into that one in our,
I believe it was farmland.
it
Yeah.
was? So in essence, I was just looking for the same thing. What's the net
Yeah.
relative to the school board and the effect, or to the district? And it
I had the
would be-
first reaction when I wrote to Nancy. I said, well, how much, what's the assessor say we'd get now versus what we would get then? But if it's farm property.
Right.
I mean, it's certainly not at the highest end of
Right.
taxable use.
Got it.
So,
Yep, thank you.
So, yeah, I have more a point than a question. So let's just be clear that Green Street Partners they're not the ones installing the solar panels, right? So New York State has a renewable energy portfolio. We are required to have a certain amount of renewable energy generated or renewable electricity generated within our state. This company makes money by connecting land places with communities who want it, with the companies who put it in. So I don't know if they're a 501c3, but like they're benefiting from this. So I would definitely be in favor of having a pilot. I have solar panels on my house. My assessment went up many years, 8 years after I put them in by about 20%. Probably not due completely to the solar panels, but I think we want to at least go into a pilot, if not get, the benefit of but I agree with Jim. I think it's important to incentivize bringing in renewable energy. But New York State does that in a lot of different ways.
You remember too, homeowners and small businesses, they'll get income tax credits for these kind of investments as well. So
Right.
whether or not you get real estate tax benefits as well, different issue.
Yeah.
Tom, how come this is so much different than the negotiations that we go through with nuclear power?
I don't know.
Good answer. So I'm just saying, we agree to a pilot, but it really is up to the IDA. We have no say then in any of the negotiations. We just have to.
Does the
Trust the
district
IDA to do their
negotiate
job.
directly with the power plant?
We do.
Okay.
Yes,
It's
yes.
a little different, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, there may not, listen, I'm relying on what another attorney told me. What's his name?
Coley.
Yeah. He said that there's an agreement among the taxing jurisdictions, including the district, that the IDA negotiates the pilot.
I
If-
think, yeah, did he
It's-
provide proof of that agreement?
Well, we weren't at that.
Okay.
We weren't in the
I'm
contest.
concerned with that whole
We're not in the
process too,
contest
so-
phase.
Yeah,
So,
maybe we'll get there.
I mean, certainly all the towns are affected are probably going to rely on the IDA to negotiate it too. I mean, so.
Okay, so our recommendation is that we do move forward with a pilot, and we will certainly bring that to share that with you, so you can see what that pilot looks like. But that's our recommendation. Any concerns around that? Pretty good with that? All right, thank you, Tom.
Okay.
We're all set. All right, so board, if there's no other questions, that's all I have tonight. Thank you for your time. All set. Yes.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, items A through F as presented. If I could have a motion? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Just for the public's knowledge, we all have backup information that's been provided to us 5 days before this meeting. So when they see us voting and we clump things together, it's not just rubber stamping. We have all read the backup, asked any questions that we had from that backup, and now we are here voting on it. I just think it's important that the public is aware that we have the information ahead of time to take in and understand.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel with Heidi Sweeney.
Good evening. Our first two items are professional staff recommendations. A resignation, and B, a volunteer for modified girls volleyball.
Items A and B, if I could have a motion.
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And our support staff recommendations, C through G. We have a resignation and a leave of absence adjustment. And then we have a probationary appointment, as well as 2 permanent appointments, and our batch of sub and temp employees.
Items C through G, motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
A is a donation from Exelon to Fitchie Park School in the amount of $275 from their employee engagement program. B is a donation from Moose Lodge 743 in the amount of $500 to the district to use for community needs. C is authorizing the issue of refunding school district bonds, $3.6 million worth of bonds for savings over the next 8 years of approximately $170,000. D is an agreement with Save Ally Action Professional Services. This is for professional development for teachers with a book study, and that is in the amount of $150. E is an MOA with SUNY Oswego for Team Sheldon in the amount of $8,000, and that's professional development for teachers and student teachers.
Items A through E. Motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second? Any discussion?
I'd just like to say thank you for the donations. Backwards. Thank you for the donations from Exelon and the Oswego Moose Lodge.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda is the student representative discussion. Sorry.
All right, hey guys. Just first thing I wanted to talk about was our motivational speaker today. It was Dr. Mark Abraham. He was very enthusiastic, and just want to highlight one of the things he discussed, the keys to success. 5 steps. Have a dream, number 1. Mine personally was to succeed in college. Number 2, believe in your heart. Number 3, locate yourself, ground yourself, make yourself known before you go out into the world. 4, be ambitious and have realistic goals for yourself. And number 5, change the narrative of who we are. And I wrote them down. I thought they were very intelligent. And I like having the motivational speakers. I know we had the Rachel Challenge earlier this month, and it was something that was really interactive for the students, changing up the schedule, and I think it was really helpful for our class. And especially today, this was district-wide, I think 7,500 people. Dr. Abraham presented too. It was about an hour, so it was good for the students. And then there's also some more cafeteria changes. I think keeping the students in their own sections is helpful, especially with reducing the altercation level of moving from the theater to the lunchroom, things like that. And we're now introducing, coming this week, there's going to be QR codes on the seats, so students can sit with their friends. Doesn't have to be separated by alphabetical order, and you can do some more contact tracing a lot easier with the introduction of the QR codes, and a little more freedom to where they sit. And we're reducing some of the lunches just for the cafeteria. I believe 7 and 8 are a little bit smaller, so the district gave us some more chairs, so we'll be able to fit that into there. And then maybe moving on in the future, we can get all in the same lunch, but we'll see what happens. And then, yeah, our OHS Drama Club put on Check Please, which was, I think, a great success. I'm glad we got to bring back theater performances. I know it's been a while since we've had anything there, and it was a good gathering. It was definitely COVID safe, so I look forward to future plays. I know there's auditions that people are doing coming up, and then concerts as well for band and orchestra and chorus. Let's see. Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate the success on the play to all the students and teachers and staff who helped with that. And yeah, winter sports just started. I personally am in indoor track, and I'm glad they brought that back this year, because I know due to COVID, it was tough last year to get that one going. So I'm really excited for that this year, and a lot more students get to participate in sports. 'Cause I know it's one of the bigger events. We have about 30, 40 kids.
Indoor track?
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of kids get their exercise. I know I'm happy about it. And then, yeah, I'm just happy working our way to like a new form of normalcy. I mean, I don't really think we'll get back to the way things were in the district. And I'm excited to see a lot of progress that we're making moving forward in our school. And I know transitioning is tough for the students, but we're getting a lot of support and help from students, staff, just anything, like small or large, especially with the motivational speakers, stuff like that. I think it'll really help the students get back on track. And that's all I have.
Next is items from the board.
Oh, go ahead, Pam.
Are you sure?
I think so.
I first would like to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. Just everyone out there. Enjoy the time off. Think about what we have to be thankful for, because there is an awful lot. And faculty, administrators, support staff, teachers, parents, thank you. We appreciate all you do to try to get us back to a new normal. Be kind. Just be kind to people. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. Are there others? I want to thank Zach for his very thorough report. That's fantastic. No, it really gives us a good idea of what it's like to be you and to be your classmates. So thank you so much. Now, Zach did ask me last week, he's a busy guy and he's starting sports. And I just wanted to bring the question to the board and also to know if there's anything prohibiting this, but his vice it's a she, right? Yep. She sit in his place on meetings that he cannot make it. Is there anything precluding that, and are we all in agreement? We'll have to vote her in, okay. So we'll make that formal, but yes, that's.
Okay, and then like for the discussion, would she be able to make the notes if I gave her some? Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, so I do just have one thing. It goes to the conversation last week for the new administrative positions that are being recommended. I didn't have a chance to look at the presentation until this morning and look at some of the notes. But I just kind of want to say that I maybe want a little more discussion on it. I don't know. I'm still trying to form things. I apologize. I was sick all week and I'm trying to catch up with life. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is looking at the positions we've lost, the positions you're recommending we bring back, the fact that we're going through a self-study that's going to address some of these things. I guess I just like a little more conversation before I'm going to have to vote on accepting somebody into a position. And it kind of boils down to trying to understand what we're trying to do with them. I will say just flat out, I love administrators. I think administrators have a lot of great work, but I also sometimes think that we can over-administrate and try to find ways to solve problems by adding administrators. And I'm not saying that as a negative thing, but what I'm trying to understand is also how we're using our teachers and our building leaders and our coaches. And if we have funds to do things personally, and this is, again, I'm just speaking for myself, sometimes I tend to lead more towards smaller classes and more teachers and more people directly involved with the students sometimes than more oversight. And I don't know enough to say much more than that right now, which is why I guess I'm just talking about a continued conversation. Because I look at the list of things that you presented, Dr. Calvin, and I looked at it, I ended up looking at it this morning. Look at the list of positions that were cut with the budget 4 or 5 years ago, look at what we're talking about now, thinking about big picture, thinking about all of this. And I know, at least from the last conversation, you know, our resident expert on administration, we have a board member who has a great deal of experience. We haven't heard from her. And so I guess I'm just asking for more conversation at some point. Doesn't have to be now.
And Jim, I appreciate you bringing it up, because I have shared with you some of my thinking, and it's kind of aligned with what I think you're thinking. And I do believe that we need to have conversation to see what our ideas are. So I guess we're kind of requesting that. And the other thing that kind of confused me was hiring someone to come in to evaluate our needs here administratively and otherwise, yet the recommendation is coming prior to that. I think if we're going to spend that kind of money, we just put things on hold and wait for the recommendations from the evaluator.
So I absolutely appreciate, the concept of discussion. I think that kind of discussion really needs to be had when we're actually in the midst of proposing and passing that resolution. Or alternatively, Jim, if you're looking for budget conversations around positions, then that would be appropriate there as well. And I know Linda had made herself clear about how she felt about those particular, I think we're talking about the ones we just recently passed. However, I believe the majority decided that these were stopgap measures that were of some urgency. So to wait wasn't really a possibility in terms of supporting our students right now. So that was voted on. The majority decided to pass it. Thought the urgency was, pressing enough that that's the direction we need to go. So sometimes it's good to look retroactively, but once we have done things, we sort of have to move forward too. And, look to process, obviously, Jim, I think that's what you're speaking to. So we need to make sure that process matches what you're comfortable with. But in terms of a decision that's already been made by a majority of the board, it's very difficult then to kind of pick that apart after the fact.
So I am not talking about the self-study anymore, or the external study. I'm not referring to that. I didn't mention that, but I don't disagree with Linda. All right, if I were here last week, I may have something else to say. I don't disagree with it. But I'm not speaking to that, because I completely agree. Move forward. What the reasoning for me bringing it up now is a collegiality aspect of, I don't want to get to the point where we're being presented hiring a person into a position and then having the first real in-depth conversation, at least that I am thinking about. Because to me, that would come to a point of, well, I don't want to vote against, I'm not voting against a person, I'm voting against the position, but since they're integrally tied and it's at this meeting, let's talk about it. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Because again, if we a lot of times we get to a point. Here's our agenda item, right? I recommend person X into position Y. I may not have any problem with the person occupying the position, but I may have an issue with the position because I did not fully understand it. So I'm only bringing it up as a matter of process of, if it's possible to talk about these things ahead of time, may not come to a point of an absolute, this is the decision time.
I think what happened, though, we were both absent from the meeting that this was
Well,
discussed.
there was no vote yet last meeting about
Oh,
actually approving the
I
position.
assumed there was a
No.
vote.
We did, we voted on
Really?
Yeah.
approving
I
of
thought-
positions.
Which agenda item was that? There was a presentation about recommendations, but there was no motion about approving these positions.
So there was discussion, and then after discussion, we asked the group, are you okay with moving forward in that way? And the group said yes. As far as a formal vote, that there wasn't a formal vote. With all due respectfully, I have no problem with sharing any information about any position in advance. I think we need to be clear, though. The study is not there to evaluate whether we need a reading person or a math person. That's not, the purpose of the study is to look at efficiencies, how we might be better, how we might align our practices, look at our schools. It'll look at what we've kind of budgeted for, who's actually there. It'll look at space utilization. The study will look at long-term financial planning. It will look at transportation. But it's not there to evaluate, the final position, what we need will come, the board, after it receives information, certainly can use that to help make decisions.
But I think, if I'm correct and I understand, that you are hiring two different,
Directors. Yes.
right?
Yes.
No, not you're hiring the evaluators, that you have one coming in, Dr. Silky's group, for overseeing the building and student population and all that. And then it was my understanding that there was another $9,000 or something where you were hiring another person to look into transportation, food service. So I may be wrong, because I had a problem with some of it. I thought, with that kind of money going out, I can honestly tell you the director of reading and a director of math is very confusing to me. And I would like to speak to my thoughts, so I'm glad there wasn't a vote. I'm sorry I wasn't here to be part of it, but I have questions.
So, I would just say, I think we talked about it twice in executive session, and I don't know that we had a formal, I just looked quickly at the agenda from last week. But I think the motion came in your presentation, was we had no, I'd have to go back and look at the.
There
It wasn't a motion, but it was a discussion and asked the
Right.
board, are you okay with me moving forward, to get consensus, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess that's the reason I brought it up, is because if I didn't bring it up, or if nobody else brought it up, we would come to a point where we would be asked to put a person into a position. The recommendation that person Y goes into the director of math, or person X goes into the director of literacy. And at that point, that vote would de facto create that position within the district. And since that position is not yet being created within the district, I think it's good to have a conversation about it. And I'm not speaking for or against. I'm just saying, based on my readings of
Okay.
the materials.
Do you want to make that vote, Jim? Because unfortunately, we can't really go and do a search and find people and interview if we're not, as a board, going to support the position.
No, that's a good point.
And I think it's important to know, I do believe the district still has the positions, we just didn't fill them. Or did they get eliminated?
They were cut.
They were eliminated?
Eliminated from the budget.
Okay.
They were cut from the budget. So how do we want to proceed? Because I think Jim is feeling like he would feel more comfortable if we had a formal vote on these positions, and I think Linda would like a moment to express herself. So If someone would like to make a motion on these positions, we can open it up to dialogue then and have a vote, and we can do it now.
So as the person bringing it up, I would be against, I apologize. I have been trying to catch up in life a lot in the last week, and I did not have a lot of these thoughts until just recently. Personally, when creating any type of position like this, I would be against any kind of motion that didn't appear on the agenda. I think that these kinds of things should have public notice and should not be brought up just in the moment and then have it be that way. I think one of the reasons why we have an agenda that contains motions and recommendations is so the public is aware of it and the public can comment if they see fit, and we have time to plan on it. I haven't planned on it. So if there were a motion, if somebody really wanted to do it and second it, that's fine. I would make a motion at some point to table it. Just because.
I hear you, Jim. The problem is we have discussed these very positions over the past 2 meetings, and so now we're losing time in terms of filling these positions for those of us who do find them to be of some matter of urgency. So I think that is a problem.
One of my thoughts, though, you know, I think Jim's speaking to it more articulate in speaking to it. My problem is with the director of math and director of reading, you have got leadership, you've got principals in the building with coaches and reading teachers. Let's see, coaches, reading teachers, you've got one lady that spoke, I don't know what that is a team, to me, that should be looking at the data, coming together, understanding their population group, and finding out what the needs of those children are, and then coming to the superintendent with their recommendation. I don't see a need for a director. It's, you know, I came from a small district, so I know how we managed, and we were a blue ribbon school. I just think we're putting too much when we've already got people there that given a job description. I would go for a data person that worked with each of these buildings, and that person had the data, worked it out for each building, and sat once a month with each building and go through student needs.
So I think, go ahead, Mathis, if you'd like to say something.
We are doing those things right now. We have been doing those things for quite some time. Our district needs more, with all due respect. So I did share information at the last board meeting about this, and I am certainly committed to any discussion that the board wishes to have. I really feel that we need someone to help us with reading and with math. I feel when you look at our data, and I don't want to, less than 35% of our children in reading are meeting state goals, and this has not just started, this has been for a long term. Math is between 40 to maybe just under 50%. We need help. I think that when I look around in the district, what's very clear to me is that there's not enough hands, there's not enough oversight, there's not enough support. We're trying to align the work that we're doing with respect to reading and with math, and to get better outcomes. So I am not one who believes, as I talked in our presentation, that the answer is always just putting more staff on it, all right? I try to do everything we can beforehand. My feeling, respectfully to the board, is that more is needed. So if you want to have additional conversations, I don't have any problem. But I just want to say respectfully to the board, I believe in reading and in math. We need more support. We have reading coaches. We have reading teachers. We have math.
Team leaders, you've got team leaders?
We do. But we need some alignment, we need some support, we need some leadership in those areas to help us, additional leadership in those areas to help us. And that's just my recommendation to the board. So I respectfully submit that this evening, And whatever way the board wishes to go with it,
And, you
we
know,
can do so.
right, Mathis, and the other thing is, I'm not against all of it. I honestly believe this district needs an assistant superintendent. I think what we've piled on these people, transportation, lunch, Dr. Sweeney, what she's been asked to do over the past, 3 or 4 years is ridiculous. So there are positions that I could support. I could support a data person. I could support an assistant superintendent so that when you're not only, taking off or taking some of the stuff off of Nancy's plate and dividing your job the way it was before. I understand that. And I understand a need for a data person. I'm having a problem, 2 problems. One, you've got people that if they're given a job description with a data person and a team in that building, they should be meeting monthly
They do that.
on these children. I don't think hiring a director is going to do anything, but putting more staff in these classrooms, more teachers into the inclusion classroom, more support for those teachers. I always have a belief that money should be as close as we can get it to the students. So, and it's fine, whatever the board decides, and I typically don't speak up, but this I do speak up because I have some strong beliefs.
Just a matter of process. Typically, if there is an additional position created, not during the budget process, is that something that typically the board votes on the position and then the person?
No.
No.
No, we
So
don't.
my suggestion is, I understand your reservation in doing it this way, Jim, but when the position comes to us, we can revisit this conversation if we would like to. It won't be anything personal towards the person in that position. But my only hesitation to that is you hate to go through all of the process of interviewing if we don't at least have a majority of the board who is supportive of moving forward, which I believe was the purpose of our conversation last week. So last week, I believe it was unanimous with the people who were here that we were going to move at least forward to interview and bring somebody to us. So my recommendation, and I don't know if the board agrees, but that we move forward with that. That was the decision last week. And then Jim and Linda, you guys can bring your reservations when we formally bring those positions back to the board as a resolution with someone's name attached, and we'll discuss it again. Is there anyone else who would like to do something differently?
I would just say maybe, because we're not meeting again now for 3 weeks. So I'm definitely, I think, in favor of if you've already started or placed ads or whatever, but maybe in the interim, we can vote on the revised organizational chart of the district, which has the new positions in it. And this way, if it's not until January that somebody, we're bringing someone, then at least that person will already be, like, the position will already be created, and then we can kind of, untangle the person from the position.
But if we do that at the next meeting, is that going to hold up process for interviews and all of that?
It won't hold up process unless the board says hold up process.
Tom?
I agree with Heather. I think we're in the process. We continue down that road. And then I like the recommendation of reviewing it when we get there. But I agree, it is something that I feel we need in those positions, both of those areas, and the sooner the better. So that's just my particular position.
I just want to add in, I sat in the audience 6 years ago when the director of math and reading were cut, and I sat back there going, this can't be good. And I had my doubts then. I think the data shows we need these positions, and we need them now. There needs to be a key person in both of those areas They're our weakest areas, and nobody is in, the girls they have too much. And now you add pandemic stuff to all of them. It's too much. Our principals are overwhelmed. I don't think there's a person in our district that's not overwhelmed. I think it's urgent that we have these 2 director positions. Again, I was nervous 6 years ago. 6 years later, we need them back. Our numbers scream it.
Okay, how about this as a compromise then? We will go with Lisa's idea. At our next meeting, we will present the organizational chart with those amendments made to them. And then Jim and Linda, you'll have an ability to voice your opinions. Linda would like job descriptions in the interim if possible. Is that?
Especially for the director.
We
For the
sent
draft.
those. Those
They
were
they were
transmittal.
already sent, Linda,
sent
and
transmittal.
actually,
I thought I saw that.
that's one of my issues.
Okay, so why don't we reserve that conversation for next
Now,
meeting?
Is that going to come to us in one document,
Yep,
or
it was
are
sent.
they gonna be separated?
It was a transmittal on November 5th. The,
But, I said, there are things in what he recommended that I agree with, but there are things I don't, because I think we already have them in place. And in response to you, Pam, a director isn't going to be affecting success with a student. The teachers in the classroom, small class sizes, support in these inclusion classrooms, as close to the students as we can get. And
I don't disagree with that at all, Linda, but I do believe we need one person to be in charge of everybody that's doing reading, of everybody that's doing math, so that they can support the teachers in the classroom with the kids to bring those scores up.
But that's what the coaches do.
It's not effective.
Not totally, not in isolation itself. So I think it's a partnership. I just want to be clear about it. It's a partnership, it's a balance, because we do have a number of things that we do see that are working well with the coaching, right? But this is another layer to help us, right? So I just want to clarify. I understand what you're saying.
Numbers where we would like them to be.
I think there's more that we can continue to build, more we continue to work on, more that we can add to and support and move us in the right direction. That's my thought. Trying to just
Okay,
say it.
are we comfortable with this compromise then? Linda and, I'm asking Linda and Jim, because the rest of us were comfortable. Well, no, I need you to, because the rest of us had already kind of decided that we were going to move forward. And so now we're going to make something official prior to actually having a person on the line, if that's what you would like.
Sure. Yeah, again, I'm just, and I apologize for opening this can of worms. I no way meant to have this devolve at all. Not having been here last week, looking at the meeting as I did, I went and looked at the meeting, I looked at the materials we've been developed, and I've got questions, I have thoughts. And I was just hoping not to get to a vote on a person before being able to discuss those.
Okay, so I think that's an appropriate place then.
Yeah, so if I can just clarify for Linda then, I think you were asking what's going to come to us. So I believe what will come to us is the new organizational chart, which includes the positions.
The 3.
But if we vote yes on that, then we vote yes on the director of math, on the director.
Right.
Right,
So if
so
you-
if you have a
No,
problem
but-
with any one of them,
Right.
it's a
But
no.
Linda, you are more than welcome to, at that time, make an amendment to remove or change any
Yes.
part of that structure you would like, and that would be open to deliberation. So while that may be in there presented in a way, that does not mean that's the way it has to be. You, as a board member, are welcome to make any type of motion to amend as you can.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so we will do that next week.
Can I have a job description for those people?
It's already come to you in transmittal, November 5th, but we can send it
We
again.
can send it again.
We can send it again. I just want to say that it's hard enough for Dr. Kelvin to do his job, for administration to do their job. If the majority of the board that's at a meeting makes a decision and pushes it forward, it is very, very frustrating then to revisit it because there are always going to be more questions, always. So if we want to speak to process and we want to change process, let's do that. But I can only imagine how frustrating this is to constantly be stepping back, when a majority of the board has already made a decision. So I just wanted to put that out there.
But you didn't vote on it, you just all shook your head yes, right?
We all agreed, whether it was a
Yeah.
formal vote or not, you know, our word is still means something. And like Matt has said, it isn't always formalized, a position like that, until a person is in place. Okay, any other items? Okay, I do believe we need to go to executive session.
Yes, I do need to discuss negotiations, the work performance of a particular employee, and the record of a particular student. Okay?
Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Would there be a need for a vote after executive session?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.